Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm making this podcast on the request of the Impact Lawyers magazine to explain a little bit about the article that we wrote on the magazine entitling COVID-19 versus Climate Change Impacts, Lesson Learned During the Pandemic. My name is Lindayanti Sulistiawati. You can call me Linda. I am a senior research fellow at the APSEL, Asia Pacific Center for Environmental Law, National University of Singapore, and I also teach at Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. We wrote this article together, me and my friend, Professor David Linan. He is from the University of South Carolina, USA, but he also teaches at the University of Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. This article explains two things. The first one is legal implication of COVID-19, and the second one is trying to pinpoint similarities between the pandemic of COVID-19 to climate change impacts. So for legal implications of COVID-19, there are when we see countries battling with COVID-19, it is apparent that there are several legal implications. The first one is individual rights versus governmental power during state of emergency or similar emergency status. The second one is the importance of data versus the rights of privacy of people. The third one is judiciary problems, such as court trials, private property, economic freedom versus contracts. And then after explaining all of that, in short, the article tries to pinpoint similarities between the pandemic with climate change impacts. The first legal implication of the pandemic is clashes of individual rights versus governmental power. Some states decided earlier to have a state of emergency status, have their border closure, and reduce their territorial activities, while other states decided to wait and keep their state's economy running. In both cases, however, there arises a dilemma of individual rights versus governmental powers, although realistically, in cases of public health, such as COVID-19 pandemic, the public interest should trump any individual rights. So the second legal implication is the importance of data versus privacy. The data now becomes more important than ever during the pandemic. Some governments in several countries are using tech data to track the movements of its citizens. Some are still asking for permission in terms of the citizens have to download the apps in their cell phones, but some are just, giving authorities to be able to do that automatically within the network of the cell phones. So, however, in both situations, we could see that the privacy of the people are being put into a second row. When we're facing this pandemic and health issues. So there's a possibility there will be lawsuits or citizen complaints for privacy breach during or after this pandemic. The third legal implication is judiciary problems, such as court trials during the pandemic, are prominent in states. Procedurally, it's very hard to conduct a court trial during the pandemic periods. Parties are reluctant to attend court proceedings due to the possible health hazards. Nonetheless, because court is among the essential services that have to be kept open during the pandemic, the courts need to have to organize trials with different platforms. And the one that they choose usually is digital platform. So in like more advanced countries such as Brazil, for example, which the vast majority of courts and tribunals were already fully digital before COVID-19, that would not be a problem. But for the rest of the world, it was very hard for the courts to keep up with this digital preparedness. So some of them are not even prepared to be able to conduct digital procedure, digital process within the courtroom. So there are possibility of potential lawsuits against digital court proceedings because it potentially trespasses constitutional rights in some countries, for example. And the fact that it's very new in some countries, there might not be any regulations or the basics framework for it to work. The fourth legal implication, the possible legal implication, is legal tension between the rights of the property owner versus tenant and existing contract. So why we say this? It's because we understand that it's difficult specifically for small businesses to stay afloat during this pandemic. And the fact that they should be paying rent while no customers were allowed to visit their vicinity is also not logical. But on the other hand, the building owners should still pay their bills, utility bills, electricity bills, water bills, etc. And hence, there's a big possibility that they will assert the terms of the signed contracts. So, questions arise, such as whether the doctrine of force majeure be applied when the whole lockdown period was established, or will this negate all previously signed contracts? And would it be difference between common law countries and civil law countries in terms of the implications? Well, in short, if you're looking at common law contracts, traditional narrow views of impossibility may apply, but when you look at such contract in civil law jurisdiction, there are like provisions from German law or French law that would potentially also be applicable. Now we come to the links between COVID-19 and climate change impacts. The impacts of COVID-19 are probably not more than 1 to 100 percentile in comparison to the anticipated devastation of climate change. However, there is an unseen similarity between COVID-19 and climate change impacts. The first one is that both climate change and COVID-19 have very similar narratives. Both are linked to rapid change. And in COVID-19, people are protesting against something that would be fairly straightforward public health measures, such as school closure, mosque closures, churches lockdowns, etc., because they violate freedoms, are more political issues than anything else. Most people are afraid of rapid change of their daily life and scared of what is coming in the near future. In the impact of climate change, rapid change will also take place without mercy. For example, natural disaster that leads to displacements, massive deaths, or even losing a whole state because of sea level rise. This is a possibility in climate change impacts. And this is hard to visualize for some people. The second similarity between COVID-19 and climate change impacts is the comparison on carbon taxes and stranded assets, mainly because of the fossil fuel industry. Um, uh, when climate change impacts are understood as, something that is very urgent, people would make a shift, adapt to renewable energy, and fossil fuel industry would, implement it. Similarly, in the COVID-19 time, we see that how oil prices have already plummeted all over the world, and that oil producing countries are already losing billions of dollars from the economic interruption. This is just a preview for what will become if climate change, when climate change took place. And the third is the role of media in advocating the issue, both in climate change and also in COVID-19. The role of media is very strong, although the framing is a little different. When we are talking about the issue of COVID-19, somehow it's very urgent and deadly and dangerous. But when we're talking about climate change impacts, the issue became something that will come in the near future or in the future. So the urgency of the issue is somehow framed differently. We need to understand, however, that this pandemic is a preview. It's a preview for climate change impacts. The significant death of COVID-19 is nothing to the possibility of injuries, illness, deaths from extreme weather and climate events, malnutrition, heat stress, malaria, dengue, or other climate change impacts. Those are the points that we put forward in our articles, and your comments and inputs are welcome. Please send them to the Impact Warriors magazine for further context. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day.